Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Ball and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all our different coaches, experts and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Our guest today is Max Lowery. Max is a personal trainer, an author and a UK mountain leader. His podcast with me was probably one of the easiest I've done. Really connected with Max on a lot of different topics, things like cold water therapy, breathing, intermittent fasting, sleep, movement and so on. All things that he delivers with his mountain retreats and his courses and his PT and his books and so on and so forth. I really think you guys are going to enjoy this one. I hope that everyone does so as much as I enjoyed recording it with him. And if you do, please take a moment to like and subscribe on YouTube if that's where you listen. Please take a moment to review, like, subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then, share it to the world. Get Wellness Academy out there for us and enjoy. Max, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time out, as I just found, to ignore your girlfriend for an extra, having not seen her for a month, whilst you're in Brussels at her apartment, and take the time out to talk to us on the Wellness Academy. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into anything specific, I thought you could take a moment to give anybody who listens a little bit of an understanding about who you are, and then I guess maybe most importantly, what kind of things it is that has brought you to us. What is it that you're passionate about? What do you? What are your main areas of focus and attention at the moment?
I get asked this question a lot, and it probably makes more sense if I start quite far back. But initially, as a teenager, was thoroughly into sport and exercise. That's all I knew. I then actually got kicked out of 2 schools for drug and substance abuse. I then had about 6 or 7 years where I was completely off the rails, ended up working in finance for 4 years, which was great, but also very unhealthy, stressful, drug-addled environment.
Okay. And is it anything like the Wolf of Wall Street, or am I just thinking of
there were dwarfs sometimes, I'm not even exaggerating.
Okay.
But I was young. I was so I was working in finance as a broker from the age of 19 till 23 or something. I'm now 29. And towards the end of my time there, I just kind of realized I wasn't interested in what I was doing. I felt terrible all the time, no sleep, constantly hungover, stressful job, eating everything in sight all the time. So slowly but surely kind of remembered who I was and what made me feel good. And that was being active, being involved with sport somehow. So I kind of qualified as a personal trainer before I left the job, not having no idea what I was going to do with it. And it was kind of before the days of Instagram as well. So, I didn't know if people did well out of it. I didn't know. I just thought if I did something that I had a passion for, that made me feel good and that I could help people with, then hopefully things will happen. I did quit the job. I then went traveling around South America, where I discovered intermittent fasting, completely by accident. And okay. I then got back to the UK, went back to eating normally 3 meals a day, and didn't feel as good, put on some weight, was thinking about food all the time, was tired and lethargic in the mornings, having felt the opposite in South America. And then as I started researching it more, started realizing it could potentially help my clients. I started personal training in London and had a decent client base, introduced it to some of their programs, had great results with it. And then it developed into me kind of naming my own method, which I call the 2 meal day. Had a book come out 2 years ago, and there's a website, 2mealday.com, which is all about transitioning people into this way of eating. Since then, quite a lot's happened. I've moved my training business all online, so I coach people remotely, which is why I'm in Brussels. I move around a lot. And then I set up Connect Retreats, which is down in the French Pyrenees, which is a hiking retreat. And it's just basically, as time's gone on, I've realized a lot of people in London in particular putting a lot of time and effort into their training and their dieting, as it were, but they're not getting the mental health benefits of getting out of a city and reconnecting with nature. And there's more and more research coming out saying that this is really, really important. It's made a drastic impact on my own mental health. So I, wanted to be able to offer initially my clients, but my social media following, anyone that wanted to come join me on these retreats in the Pyrenees. And it's kind of like a mini incorporates everything that I talk about. There's cold water therapy, there's hiking, there's nature, there's mobility, there's breath work. It's all in one amazing package. And yeah, so that's where we are now.
Amazing. So yeah, loads and loads of stuff to touch on, which it's funny that you seem to be interested in pretty much the same things that I am. So like when I got approached with looking at coming to do this podcast, it's a gentleman named Ben, who's the co-owner of the Wellness Academy. Wellness Academy podcast originally started out as a bit of an idea to promote Wellness Academy, not to be like a separate entity. That idea quickly transitioned to the podcast, Wellness Academy podcast, being its standalone thing. But one of the reasons I think Ben was attracted to the idea of me being the host of our show together is that I kind of think of myself as a little bit of a jack of all trades. So very much like a kind of one of the people I've followed for years is a guy called Tim Ferriss. It would shock me if you didn't know who he was. Yeah,
but he's one of the reasons why I left my finance job.
Okay, that post 4-hour work week, or
so I read the 4-hour work week, and it just made me realize that there's more to life. I mean, many things made me leave, but that made me realize that there were other ways to make a living.
Yeah, it was the 4-hour body that really changed my life and attracted me to Tim, because I did the slow carb diet from the book. And lost 3.5 stone in 4 months.
Wow.
It's one of those crazy scenarios where I remember being in a local gym saying to a friend, I just want someone to tell me what to eat and when to eat it. And literally the slow carb diet does that. And even like right now, having just come back from California, I'm doing it for a short-term period to lose the body fat that I know I've put on with 11 days of Californian American classic food. You know what I mean?
Giant meals.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I have experimented with intermittent fasting. I'm a keen observer of cold and heat therapy. I enjoy being out in nature and like to walk barefoot in the grass. I teach martial arts for a living, so spending time barefoot is a big part of my life anyway. And I'm a big believer of a lot of Kelly Starrett's work over at the Ready State, when he talks about spending more time barefooted and like barefoot Saturdays and so on and so forth. So it sounds like there's massive amounts of crossover between the stuff that you're into and the stuff I am.
Because it works.
There was like a couple. There is that. First thing I was curious about, based on what you said, just out of curiosity, was there anything at all different about the way that you intermittently fasted when you were in South America versus to the way that you've experienced it outside of there? Or is it literally just intermittent fasting in your experience?
Well, no, when I was in South America, I didn't know there was a thing called intermittent fasting. Basically, I was staying in hostels, and I was in Rio de Janeiro at the time, and they have these kind of buffet restaurants, which is just like normal over there. And so I had the bright idea, I don't know what it was, but I had the bright idea that I would just eat one massive meal a day to save money, and because I felt pretty good doing it.
Okay.
And so basically I would train, I was partying quite a lot of the time. So, I was like 23 or something like that, and would go out, wake up around 11 o'clock. I then go and train on the beach, got really into fitness, having left finance. I then wouldn't really eat until 5 or 6 o'clock, and it would just be one giant meal. And I lost a ton. I lost all the weight that I put on in finance. At the same time, I was training loads, so I kind of transformed my physique. But more than anything, I just felt so great all the time. My mental clarity was insane. I wasn't constantly thinking about food. I felt less hungry than I did before. And I was saving money doing all this. So I didn't know what it was until I got back to the UK.
Okay.
And then I went back to eating 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all home cooked from scratch. And I was actually doing keto at the time as well, so pretty low carb. And I put on some weight, didn't feel as good. And kind of then I started researching it and was like, okay, what was I actually doing? And found out there was something called intermittent fasting. So yeah, I immediately
Okay.
experimented skipping breakfast, which I was so scared about, so pessimistic about, even though I've been doing it in South America. But when you're back in your usual routine, your usual mindset, but yeah, immediately,
Surrounded by the usual people, the usual the usual neuro associations and so on and so forth. Yeah, I get you.
yeah, but immediately, felt great. Was sub 10% body fat without even trying, and that was six years ago now. So I haven't
Look
stopped.
back since. Yeah. So what do you stick to now in terms of like your eating window or your meals? Do you follow strictly what it is that you do in your book, obviously titled The 2 Meal Day? Is that what you do?
Yeah, so I developed the 2 meal day because I think having incorporated it into a lot of my clients' lives, there was quite a large amount of them that were getting obsessed with the clock, and were counting down the hours until they could eat, and stressing, oh, but I can't go for dinner with my friends because I've said I'm going to, all that bollocks. So
Yeah,
I
I get you.
basically tried to simplify the whole thing because for me, the benefits come from learning to listen to your body. And if you're listening to the clock, you're not going to be listening to your body. So with the 2 meal day, it's exactly how it is. You choose whether you're going to drop breakfast or drop dinner. And you have one. So say I'm not eating first thing in the morning, I'll have a large lunch. I might have a snack after lunch, and then I'll have a large dinner, and that's it. The time frame is irrelevant to me. I don't count it.
Okay.
I mean, it's always about 16 hours. It's anywhere between 14 to 20 hours, but it really depends on what's going on with my training, how much did I eat the day before, how much did I sleep, and this for me is um, the only method that makes intermittent fasting become a way of life rather than a crash diet. It's something you do in the short term. So that's what I do now. I just listen to my body and eat, on average, eat 2 large meals and one snack in between.
Okay. Do you combine any high or low carb or high, low protein, high, low fat principles with your 2 meal day routine, or is it literally just? So there was a guy I followed briefly. He wasn't in my niche area, but it was within a friend's. And what
Mm-hmm.
attracted me to kind of paying attention to him, and this was when Snapchat was more popular than Instagram. Maybe Snapchat's more popular than Instagram with some people, but for me and the
Not
people
now.
who I tend to associate with and stuff, like Instagram is great. I know that people can espouse like the negative benefits of Instagram, and we'll probably touch on that at some point very soon. But I'm quite a fan of Instagram. But this was when Snapchat was more of a big deal, and he used
Mm-hmm.
to only within a 4 hour window. This
Mm-hmm.
gentleman was a big guy, like very well built, looked a lot younger than his age. So like claimed that the benefits of intermittent fasting were allowing him to, be more youthful as such.
Mm-hmm.
But he ate whatever he wanted during that 4 hours, like whatever he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially a cheat day every day
I've
because
seen
of the
that
size of
guy.
the guy. Yeah, he knew that calories wise, like it didn't matter. But I'm imagining that's not what you do. But are you intermittent fasting and low carb? How does that work for you?
As much as you like, and like in a time period, it can exacerbate a negative relationship with food and binging, and yeah, I don't think it's a good thing. I mean, pretty much anything that I teach, nutrition has got really complicated, but for me, it's actually really simple. Just cook from scratch with fresh ingredients, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, that's a
Obviously,
good shout.
you can't do that all the time. But 80% of the time, if you're doing that, you're going to be fine. When it comes to macronutrients, I personally prefer to eat mostly low carb, but that's just me, and I'm a lot less strict with it than I was before. The reason I choose to eat lower carb most of the time is because of digestive reasons, predominantly. But some low carb is going to work for some people. Usually, white Western Europeans genetically do better than people in Asia, people in Africa. So yeah, it really that's what I love about intermittent fasting. The 2 meal day, it's unbiased. You can fit any way of eating. You could be vegan, vegetarian, you could be really high protein, whatever, into an intermittent fasting schedule.
How does it work when you do your retreats and you are digitally fasting and you're climbing around the French Pyrenees and stuff? Do you relax when you do that? Do you modify it in any way when you go?
So it's interesting you use the word relax because you
Yeah,
know
yeah, that's my own language. Yeah, I should take that back.
no, it's a valid point because I feel so much better eating like this. So it's a no-brainer for me. Everyone's like, "Oh, how do you have that self-discipline? How do you have the motivation?" There is no self-discipline. There is no motivation because I feel so much better doing it. So it's a no-brainer.
Mhm.
When it comes to the hiking retreats, I do provide breakfast for the guests because one of the biggest mistakes people make with intermittent fasting is doing too many things at once. And if they come on a retreat, they've been kind of doing the 2 meal day or intermittent fasting a bit, but they then are not used to hiking, then I'd rather they ate first thing in the morning so that they can have get stuff done. I
Mhm.
still don't eat breakfast on the retreats, but only because the retreats are quite slow paced for me personally. I'm going at the pace of the slowest person. But when I'm doing serious mountains like Mont Blanc, I did in summer, Anito, the highest in Pyrenees, in summer as well, then I would eat in the morning. I kind of follow the train low, race high principle. So I do a lot of my training fasted, not all, but when I really want to perform, I will eat before, and that way I've got kind of double whammy effect of being super sensitive to the food that I eat because I don't usually eat it first thing in the morning, and being really good at using my stored energy. And the combination of those two
Okay.
really does affect performance positively.
Okay. And you've obviously got a lot of knowledge about your body as an individual, because I think just with a brief little bit of research into yourself, my understanding is that you were a competitive sprinter.
Yeah.
I've seen your pictures. You're in great shape. I've watched your Instagram videos and your IGTV and stuff. You're in great shape. Obviously, it's not just aesthetically great shape because you're capable of these extended retreats and so on and so forth, climbing mountains that I'm sure would be a challenge to a lot of people. Not an insurmountable challenge, but a
No.
challenge nonetheless. I know you've been a sports model, and you're, of course, like I say, massively into your training. So you benefit from the understanding of your body, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I try to teach other people as well, is how to listen to their body, how to understand their bodies. Because I think once you understand that, once you're able to listen to your body, then the world is yours. You can do whatever you like to a certain extent. You'll know what is good for you and what's not good for you, and you'll know how to fix something that isn't good for you. And that's exactly what I try to teach people. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I discovered from doing the slow carb diet and having like that opportunity to reset for 4 months. I remember every time there was a cheat day, and let's say, I mean, across the 4 month period, I probably experienced somewhere around 16 of them. And to begin with, like, didn't care that I felt terrible, like just went the whole hog and had a terrible breakfast, terrible lunch, terrible dinner, and then put in, it wasn't uncommon for me to have like 3/4 of a tub of Ben and Jerry's to myself, throw the rest of the tub away so I wasn't tempted to eat it the next day. But of course, week on week was still losing good like body fat.
Yeah.
But it did help me understand how you feel with just one bad meal, like one meal of. And I love that you said that the best way to go about doing it is just to 80% of the time cook from scratch, home cooked food. Because whilst I miss the food in California and some of the outstanding things I ate, I was looking forward to coming home and cooking my own food.
Yeah.
And I feel so much better. Like, is the food a little bit less tasty? Maybe, but feeling better is such a preferable experience for me compared to In-N-Out burger or barbecue or whatever it was that we ate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Can
And
you?
I think that that word feeling better is really important because you're focusing on all the right things. You're focusing on eating better because it makes you feel better rather than eating better because solely for weight loss. And that for you is probably why it's become a way of life rather than when you focus on the negative. Oh, I'm just going to exercise because I want to lose weight. I'm just going to diet because I want to lose weight. It's never going to become a way of life.
I remember hearing it in the context of, have you ever heard of the law of attraction?
Vaguely, I think. Yeah, was there a book about that?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, and there was
Cool,
there was a film that was done. So it was called The Secret.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
And on The Secret, there was a particular lady named Esther Hicks. And long story short, one of the things that they talked about with regard to the law of attraction, if you think about the idea that somebody that wants to lose weight will repeat to themselves, oh, like I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight. And if you think about the way that sentence is formed and the way that that belief is formed, in order to lose weight, by definition, you must always have weight to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to help you understand where when someone always wants to lose weight, why they yo-yo.
Yeah.
But like, if you focus on feeling good, and that is what it is for me, like, I can't stand feeling bloated. I can't stand the feeling of like my stomach just trying to contain the ridiculous meal I've just eaten. I thought that pain for me is far more real than the pleasure of a pizza or a pudding when I'm already full or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like the learning thing for me. I'm keen for you to talk to us a little bit about some of the other parts that you say. And like they're a part of your retreats. So why do you care about mobility? Why do you care about the outdoors? Why do you care about breathing and cold water therapy? Like, I know there's quite a few things there, but can you talk us through them and your thoughts on them?
I'm basically fascinated by things that are free, first of all, and that anyone can do, and that are natural.
I like that.
So all those things you've mentioned are free and they're natural for the body. It's nothing out of the ordinary. To start with mobility, the reason that's important, it should be the fundamental of any training program. It comes first. If you haven't got your mobility, you should not be lifting any weights or doing any strength work or going running. You need to have that mobility first. Then you can start working on other things after that. It's something I'm constantly working on. It's becoming more well known about, I think, and particularly with everyone sitting down at desks all day, it's people's mobility is becoming an issue. What's the second thing you said? Nature.
Well, if we touch on the mobility thing just for a quick moment, because I'm thinking to myself, there's possibly people sat at home or in the car or wherever it is they listen to this going, what on God's green earth is mobility?
Yeah.
I first learned about it from a chap named Kelly Starrett over in America, his famous Bible, Becoming a Supple Leopard. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting him out in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago and being a part of a couple of his classes. And he's as brilliant in person as I've heard him on podcasts. But I'm on podcast talking to Max Lowery, so I'm not going to talk about Kelly Starrett. Like, why don't you give the people at home, let's say you were going to go to somebody, the 3 or 4 or 5 or the places to start looking at mobility. How does somebody go, this is where I am and this is how I get better?
I'd say so.
Let me do that over a podcast.
let me start by saying what is mobility. So people often get confused between flexibility and mobility. Flexibility is the ability to lengthen a muscle, which is important. But if you don't have flexibility combined with mobility and stability, that can cause issues. So mobility basically means having strength in end ranges of motion. So for example, an example of flexibility would be able to squat all the way down to the floor, like a deep squat, good position, good technique. Then the example to add mobility into that would be to add weight into that position and be able to stand up out of the deep squat. So that's kind of just a brief summary of what it is. I'd say, the biggest issues people are coming to me with are the kind of slight rounding of the shoulders, hunchback position from sitting down at a desk all day, inactive hamstrings, tight hip flexors, inactive glutes, and all these cause a lot of different problems over a long period of time. Initially it's not that big a deal, but every month, every year that goes by when you're not addressing these issues, it's going to cause issues down the line. And that's why, You look at back pain, knee replacements, hip replacements has become it's seen as an inevitability of old age, but it doesn't have to be like that if you work on your mobility, flexibility, stability consistently over time.
Yeah, like it's not a case of old age equals a bad hip. It's a case of that accumulative time spent moving in an incorrect manner equals a bad hip. So the reason why a 5-year-old doesn't stereotypically get a hip replacement is they've only spent 5 years moving in probably a good way, not 75 years or whatever, give or take 10 or 20 of them in a bad way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like if you look at indigenous people all around the world who don't sit in chairs, their level of strength and mobility into old age is pretty impressive. So I think our kind of sedentary lifestyles, sitting in chairs, even if you're going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, those 3 or 4 hours in the gym do not cancel out, 8 hours of sitting down at your desk, 2 hours commuting into work, another 2 hours sitting down in front of the TV. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I've been there, and what I teach is incorporating mini movements throughout the day, and trying to incorporate more activity in total. Because when it comes to losing weight, people really focus on just the workouts and they don't look at what's going on outside of the workouts. I know for me, I track my activity, I track the calories burnt for a day, and on average, I'm burning about 1,500 to 2,000 active calories a day. But on a training day, only 500 or 600 of those active calories, so only 500 or 600 of 1,500 to 2,000 are in a workout. All the other active calories I burn outside the workout, because I incorporate mini movements. I walk quickly. I take 2 steps up the stairs rather than 1. There's all sorts of things you can do.
I heard a great one, which was park your car in the furthest car parking spot away from your destination.
Yeah.
And take the steps rather than the elevator or the escalator. Do you know what I mean? Simple things like that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to anything, mental or physical in your life, never take the easy option. Always take the harder option, because then your body adapts to those harder stresses, those harder inputs. Whereas if you always seek comfort, always take the lift, always don't mentally challenge yourself, then your body will stop adapting and it will stop progressing and stop evolving.
That's a good shout. I think the second thing that we touched on that you include as part of your retreats that you mentioned was like the benefits to both your mental and physical health of the outdoors. I'm a big fan. I was recently reading, or should I say listening to, on Audible, a book by a gent called Aubrey Marcus. Mm-hmm. It's called Own the Day, Own Your Life. And literally the first thing he starts talking about is when you wake up in the morning, drink some water, get some sunlight, do some moving. And if you can combine those 3, particularly the sunlight and moving, by moving outside, then even better. So I'm personally already sold on it, but if there's somebody sat at home who spends more time inside in an office with artificial light, what could you explain to them to help give them that impetus to start maybe doing walking meetings or doing a lap around the block, even in the cold when it's harder to do so? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, firstly, the reason it's good to get sunlight first thing in the morning is because it synchronizes your circadian rhythm, your body clock. So by getting the sunlight on your eyes, you're telling your body what time of day it is. And that means that everything else that happens throughout the day is going to be in sync and in line with your body clock. You may notice that I'm wearing these orange glasses right now because it blocks the blue light from laptops, iPhones, TVs, which mimic midday sun. And that midday sun...
You wear them in the evening when you're watching the TV before bed and stuff?
I wear it pretty much as soon as the sun goes down.
And you just quickly, because I never thought about that before, actually. You need glasses, right?
Yeah.
So they're a prescription pair of blue blockers.
So these ones are prescription. I also have non-prescription for wearing contact lenses.
Okay. I'm going to have a look into that. Cool. Sorry for interrupting you. Please carry on.
So the brand I use is called Blue Blocks. They're very good. So anyway, getting outside during the day has many benefits. Like I just said, the synchronizing your body clock, and there's a lot of emerging research going into circadian rhythms at the moment, and how the modern lifestyle is completely out of sync with our body clocks. We are designed to be outside, and instead we're inside these environmentally controlled offices where we don't see natural daylight, we only see artificial light, we don't breathe fresh air, we're only breathing conditioned air. So there's potential physiological benefits of getting outside and being more in line with your body clock. You're going to be able to sleep better in the evenings. You're going to be able to digest food more effectively. But also the mental health benefits of getting outside are pretty profound, and more research again is going into them. They're now actually prescribing forest bathing to reduce anxiety, stress, depression. Yeah, you're going to say something.
No, that's super cool. It made me think about how I felt when I was driving in California through redwood trees, and just the experience of being amongst nature like that, like a tree that's been there longer than I've been alive, then some, longer than my parents have been alive, longer than my grandparents have been alive. Like, there's something about that. And it made me think, oh yeah, maybe that is why, or contributes towards why forest bathing could be. That's really cool.
So I only found this out the other day, but apparently, so the forest bathing thing originates in Japan, and they've done research, and basically when you are walking around in nature, around trees in particular, they give off pheromones, and you smell these pheromones and these different things that they're giving off, and that is what brings about the reduction in stress, reduction in cortisol, increase in endorphins. And so they've actually then refined the exact molecule that is being released and made them into like an essence, and that is having a similar effect on people who aren't necessarily able to get out to to the outdoors all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think it's, in some ways for me, it's quite crazy that we have to actually name it forest bathing. That's how far gone people who live in cities are. It's, for me personally, it's made a profound impact on my mental health. I mean, unfortunately, I've never experienced any negative mental health issues other than when I was caning drugs. But even for me, who don't necessarily have any underlying mental health issues, really feel the difference for getting outside. Just not just in terms of productivity, just relaxation. I just feel like I can breathe, whereas sometimes in cities I get a bit overwhelmed. So this is why I incorporated Connect Retreats and started Connect Retreats, because I wanted to show people how to experience nature. A lot of the guys that have come, they want to go and do some solo hiking. They want to get into this because they've seen me do it on my social media, but they don't necessarily have the confidence to go and do it themselves. So I kind of give them the tools that they can go do it themselves and, improve their physical and mental health.
Okay. So one of my goals with these conversations is trying to manage. I've got loads of things I want to ask somebody, but then also not dragging something and making the conversation completely out of whack by dragging something up that I thought about beforehand. So I've tried to make a note to remember to ask you something. Yeah. But let's stay on track with regard to the retreats and stuff. Mm-hmm. Whilst you try and cover also like the breathing and the cold therapy, talk to us about that, and also sort of touch on the did you call it Connect Retreats? Did you say
Connect Retreats? Yeah.
Yeah, so talk to us about like the breathing and the cold therapy and how that works, but then also give us an idea about how the retreats work, because they sound fantastic.
Yeah, so cold water therapy is something that I've been experimenting with since I was a sprinter, so 10 years. But when I was sprinting, it was completely different attitude I had towards it. It was very much just a recovery method, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't embrace it. I just did it because I knew I had to do it. I then went to a Wim Hof seminar 3 years ago.
I was just about to say, are you Wim Hof inspired with the cold? Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I went to a Wim Hof seminar and heard him talking about cold water and breathing. He was talking about how it's free, anyone can do it, and it brings about amazing physiological benefits for the body. And for me, it really resonated because it just sounded like he was talking about intermittent fasting. It's exactly the same kind of thing. It's free, anyone can do it, and it brings about amazing natural responses in the body. And then I spoke to him at the end. He was into intermittent fasting as well. And then from that moment, I then approached cold water therapy in a completely different way. And since then, I've taken it to some extremes. I went to Scotland, I was swimming in like ice, minus, I think the outside temperature was -5 and it was 0.5 degrees in the water.
Wow.
But the reason I promote it and get people to experience it on Connect retreats is, yes, there are physiological benefits. It can boost the immune system, it's anti-inflammatory, it drains the lymphatic system. It can make you better at dealing with cold long term. But I think the mental health benefits outweigh those physical benefits, and it's why I keep doing it. And the mental health benefits being massive increase in endorphins. They're actually looking at using it for treating certain forms of depression. There's been a few BBC documentaries on that. But also it improves and increases mental toughness, mental resilience, because, even me, who's pretty used to it, I still have that thought in my head when I'm about to go in being like, what are you doing? Don't go anywhere near that water. And it's a very natural
How long did you
response.
stay in the -5 water? When it was -5 in the outside at the air temperature, how long did you stay in that water for?
It's like 1 or 2 minutes, not long.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better about myself. But I don't know if I'd even manage 1 or 2 minutes. They've got a plunge pool at the local spa hotel that I go to. And I remember being quite proud of myself that I stayed in there for 10 minutes in this plunge pool until I found out that the temperature of this water is like 12 degrees. And then finding out people that they stay in water that's 5 or 0 or minus, thinking, wow.
It's not about, it's again, like with fasting, people often get obsessed with the time. It's not about that. It's not about forcing it. It's just about, listening to your body and putting yourself through a bit of discomfort, and you then become a stronger person because of that. And that mental toughness, because when you're in the water, there's the first 30 seconds, again, your entire body is panicking and telling you to get out of the water. If you're able to overcome that, that is a really powerful thing, and it will translate into every aspect of your life. It really will. If you are able to deal with the cold, just like Wim Hof says, you are a powerful person who's in control of virtually every aspect of your life. It's a very, what's the word?
Powerful at the very least.
Yeah.
Liberating.
It's a powerful thing.
So I'm conscious of, I tend to keep our podcast at the Wellness Academy around the hour mark. We're approaching the 40-minute mark, and that's gone very fast. And I know there's several other things I want to touch on. So one of the things I wanted to go back to, just to give people a little bit of context, I did a brief bit of research, and you've sort of mentioned it. My understanding is there's not just once that you've, should I say, experienced a trough rather than a peak. Around your final school years, you were, I don't know what phrasing you would use, but mine would be kind of, should we say, you allowed yourself to be sucked into an area which nowadays, of course, I'm assuming you would no longer allow that to happen. And that was related to partying and to drug use and so on. And then you also touched on it, that it was a part of your life when you were in finance, so you were a stockbroker. It's not so much what led you to it that I was interested in. It was more what you used to lead yourself out of it that I wanted to ask you about. Like, in hindsight, is there anything that you look back on that you lent on or used to help you overcome what was obviously a difficult, more than once, difficult time in your life?
Basically, people do drugs for different reasons. I basically, my entire life, only ever did sport. I was county level at 3 sports: rugby, swimming, athletics. So from a young age, every spare moment I had was doing sport and exercise. As soon as I wasn't doing sport and exercise, when I, got kicked out of school for smoking weed, I obviously need that release, that dopamine, endorphin release from something. So I started experimenting with drugs. So over time, I do nothing in half measures. So as you probably guessed, So, when I was partying, but after a while, it wasn't the same for me anymore. I got bored of feeling awful. So the thing that got me out of it was sport and exercise and being active. I replaced, the partying with exercise, and that's initially what got me through it. And once I started focusing on the exercise, I then started understanding my body better, and then experimenting with all these other things that I now talk about. So whether it's the fasting, whether it's sleep, whether it's cold water therapy, whether it's hiking, but the initial thing that got me away from all of that was being active and having, specific goals with sport.
Okay. What would you say to somebody that is listening who, when they hear about exercise, they don't connect with exercise feeling good? They connect with exercise, the pain of exercise, or the pain of why they're exercising. Because I tend to think to myself, one of the most important things is to find something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So I teach martial arts for a living. That's my day job, and I've always enjoyed martial arts. And I find it super cool to sit and watch a UFC event and be like, I can do that. Maybe not kick somebody in the head, but at least the technique of the kick or something.
Yeah.
And then also, I'm really passionate about CrossFit as a training methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that going to group environments work better for me than personal ones. So going to a CrossFit class, training with my friends, being surrounded by a positive community. These are the same things that are involved in a martial arts class, of course, or a retreat. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Compare that to going to a gym and doing kind of bro reps or bodybuilding, or even if I'm going to the gym and I'm running on a running machine, or I'm running on the road, doing stuff on my own. I don't work as hard, I don't go as often, and I don't enjoy it as much as an environment where I've got a community.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be that way. And I found that I enjoy working out with other people. Some people don't. Would you put it just down to that? Or in your experience as a PT, are there other things that people sat going, how does he enjoy exercise? What is he on about? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that what people associate with exercise is, this kind of all or nothing mentality, where they'll start exercising in January and they'll do 5 or 6 HIIT classes a week for a few weeks and feel absolutely awful and feel terrible. And then they associate, exercise with feeling terrible. And that's not what it's about. The way that it should be, it's gradual. It's not about destroying yourself. Athletes don't destroy themselves to their absolute limit in every session. It's very controlled. They'll go 80, 90%, and very, very rarely will they actually go 100%, because that means they won't be able to train the next day. So, it doesn't have to be like that. But then even if you do it correctly and you ease into it gradually and you get yourself used to it, some people will never enjoy the gym environment, and that's fine. You don't have to go to the gym to get the benefits of exercise. Like you say, you do martial arts. That's a great way to get fit, meet people, stay active. I think very few people, in my experience, do enjoy going to the gym alone. I am one of those people. I do enjoy it. But you don't have to be going to a gym. You could go join any class that you like, as long as you're having fun and your heart rate's going up. It doesn't matter what it is. Join a local football club, join a tennis club, play squash, play badminton. I joined my old athletics club at one point, so it really,
that's cool.
It really doesn't matter.
What was that like, out of curiosity, going back, by the way, after what I'm sure was time separating? Was it like a homecoming, or was it, what was it like?
Sprinting?
Yeah, going back to your old athletics club.
No, they didn't. I mean, it was a long, big gap. It was a 10-year gap, so the coaches were different. But the whole reason I started sprinting in athletics again is because I wanted to give myself an excuse not to go out on a Friday night. And it was a really good excuse. And then obviously I got really into it, ended up doing quite well. I'm built for sprinting, even though I've done some long distance events since then. I loved training for something specific. I really enjoy doing specific things, working towards a specific goal. And I think that's another thing that can detract from people's motivation sometimes, is not having a very specific goal that you're working towards. Because even the most motivated of people like myself, if I don't have that specific goal in mind, then I'm going to be less inclined to go to the gym as much as I do.
Yeah, I feel that.
And the specific goal could be anything. It doesn't have to be a marathon. And in fact, I would advise against a marathon. It could be coming and joining me in Connect Retreats. It could be, there's so many things catering towards these kind of fitness and active events now that, you could spend all day Googling, and there's thousands and thousands of things you could do.
One of the things that I try and do then, Max, and it's quite funny thinking about these 3 questions that I normally wrap a podcast up with. You've already answered all 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if I ask one of these questions and you're thinking to yourself, pretty much that's all I've said the whole podcast. Either A, repeat it to give it the weight that you feel it deserves.
I'll do that.
Or B, provide me with something that we might not have had chance to get touch on. So I like to try and find some actionable things for people to take away. And I feel quite inspired having spoken to you, having seen you on your Instagram and connecting see that video showing a deadlift with the guy that I'm talking to and understanding a bit more about you. I think there's some really good mindsets to adopt personally in what you've said. And you've already helped me catch some of my poor language, if I'm honest, with saying things like, how do you relax when you're on a retreat? Like, not necessarily the mindset to have, which I find intriguing. But from a physical perspective, if we think about that term wellness, how do you take care of your physical wellness? And specifically, if there a habit or a tactic or a routine that you value highly, which you'll do to maintain, your physical health or your physical wellness, for want of a better word.
So probably, the thing that trumps everything else that I've been talking about that I haven't mentioned yet is sleep.
Okay.
It's the most important thing that you can do to improve your mental and physical health. It comes before your training program. It comes before whatever food you're eating. It is the most important thing that you can do, which is why I'm wearing these glasses now. I'm someone that has struggled with sleep in the past, and sleep is sacred to me. Nothing gets in the way of my 7 to 9 hours regular quality sleep. So that's what I focus on.
Amazing. And I think I'm not going to allow myself a momentary plug of our own stuff at Wellness Academy, because Kelly Starrett touched on those points, 3 or 4 of them, in a tiny 4.5-minute video that's on the Wellness Academy YouTube. And one of them that I thought was really good, that I'd never thought of before, is he advised people to go to bed 30 minutes early. It says if you add up 30 minutes early a night, after a year of 30 minutes early, you've gained an extra month of sleep. And it was just such a simple way to think. Even if you don't actually go to sleep when you go to bed 30 minutes early, generally speaking, you'll sleep earlier if you're in bed half an hour earlier than you normally are. And one of the things I've discovered is that if I read a book, a fiction book, an actual paper fiction book, I sleep better.
Absolutely.
If I come straight off watching the TV and try and put my head on the pillow, it's not a deep night's sleep in comparison. If I come straight off my phone, just a quick check of Instagram before I go to bed, it's not the same. If I've got me and my girlfriend are looking at the next holiday and it's like, oh, let's just quick look at that resort. No, it can wait till the morning. Put your phone down. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So sleep for definite. I agree.
I'll give one tip. For sleep.
Go on.
From my experience and what I advise to clients, and also from the research, probably the most important thing that you can do for your sleep is to wake up at the same time every single morning. Okay. Because what that does is synchronizes your circadian rhythm, it synchronizes your body clock, so that at that time in the morning, you're going to be in a light sleep phase, and it then also kind of, you work backwards and you get the quality sleep cycles that you need up until that moment. And that is something that I really noticed with myself. 95% of the time I'm waking up at the same time.
Done deal. Wake up at the same time in the morning. Good man. Again, you've already answered this, but let's see if you can provide us with something else that you haven't said. We just touched on physical wellness. mental wellness then, mental health now, I don't think is more of an issue in 2019, personally, from my limited understanding, one might argue. But what I do think, and I think this is a great thing, is that people are far more willing to talk about it, which I think is amazing. I've always been a person that's quite open, quite honest with my emotions. Like, I hear people talk about, I couldn't cry in front of that person, or I didn't want to. Forget that. You want to cry. You want to laugh. You want to shout. Like, to be honest with your emotion. From a mental health perspective, we've touched on, you do a lot of things that you find give you a positive benefit. Is there any of them that you would really reiterate to provide weight to it, or is there anything else that you do to look after mental wellness with yourself?
Yeah, so obviously hiking in the outdoors and nature, I've mentioned, but another thing we haven't spoken about is digital fasting.
Okay.
So exactly what you think it is. I spend a period of a day where I'm not looking at my phone at all, and in particular, social media. I'm quite rigorous with that now. There's basically only 2 half-an-hour periods in the day where I look at and use social media.
Okay.
I do a 48-hour digital fast virtually every weekend. So from Friday lunch until Monday lunch, I'm not looking at my phone at all, really. I delete Instagram and Facebook. And that has really improved my everything, my relationships with the people I care about around me, my focus, my attention, my happiness, it's all improved since incorporating digital fasting.
Do you just, it's a little bit off topic, but I'm thinking of it from a very personal perspective here now. Does that mean that with regard to all your social media, that you have someone manage it for you so that you aren't looking at your social media any more than 2 30-minute windows a day? Or do you batch things? Do you have a system that allows you to post things remotely? What do you do in that way?
So with my actual Instagram and Facebook posts, I schedule those. I batch them on a Monday morning. I used to spend the whole day doing it, but I've now decreased how much I post. So I spend an hour doing it. And when it comes to stories, I will batch. So I might record some videos in the morning if I'm like going on a walk, or there's something I want to share, some insights, but I won't upload them onto social media until either after lunch or after 6 o'clock. Okay. I also unfollowed virtually everyone on my Instagram. Not because I of any personal animosity reasons. It was just because I found with so many people posting that I'm following, if I did go on Instagram for something, I'd end up spending 15 minutes scrolling. But now that I don't follow nearly as many people, there's virtually no posts at all. So there's no excuse, or there's no reason for me to start scrolling. And that's really improved the relationship with my phone.
Cool. Okay. So finally, I'm a firm believer of understand. I've got a friend that was speaking to me on a podcast last week. He was talking about there are many kind of games of life that we can play, but there are 3 games of life that are non-negotiable: the relationship game, the health game, and the finance game. So you can choose to play them, but if you don't play those games, there'll be bigger consequences than kind of the other games of life as such. So my point being that overall balance, overall wellness is the most important thing. There are people that sacrifice their mental health for their physical health. There are people that sacrifice their physical health to work, and sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's worthy, that's worthwhile. But from an overall wellness perspective, is there anything that you do that you've left out that we've not touched on, or do they basically just cover what you've talked about so far?
Recently, I've started being consistent with meditation, and it's had a really profound effect. All I do is 2 10-minute sessions a day, first thing in the morning, as soon as I wake up, as part of my routine, and right before bed. And that has had a big effect on me. Even though I've only been doing it a few months consistently, I'm really feeling the benefits from it. The benefits being I have more focus. I am better able to understand my emotions for what they are. And I feel like I'm just a more grounded person because of that.
What meditation are you doing?
I'm literally following an app, the Sam Harris app, Waking Up.
Yeah.
And what's
Sam Harris is a ledge.
What's fascinating about his app is that he's a neuroscientist and he is talking about the science of meditation and talking about it in a way that I think a lot of people can relate to it, whereas a lot of other meditation apps and things that I've experienced is a bit out there, and not a lot of people won't be able to relate to that.
Woo.
Exactly. Whereas this, I highly recommend it. I pay for it myself. I'm not benefiting from sharing it, but just the way that he describes what's going on has made me understand it so much better, and is the reason why I'm continuing with it.
Brilliant. You mentioned their morning routine. Anything else in the morning routine other than meditation?
So I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning every single morning. The first thing I'll do is drink a massive glass of water, usually just under a pint. I then spend 5 or 10 minutes stretching, just balancing things out after sleep. I then meditate for 10 minutes, and I then write 3 pages in a journal, and that takes about half an hour, 40 minutes.
Okay. Do you use any particular journal?
Well, as in like...
so I know there's a 5-minute journal.
Books.
Okay.
So you mean what kind of method?
Yeah, do you have a journaling method?
So what I'm experimenting with recently is just writing exactly what's on my mind. It's not something that you're going to go over and read afterwards unless you want to be really cringed out.
Just putting your thoughts on paper.
Exactly. And for me personally, fortunately, as I said, I'm pretty grounded most of the time. Not many things are able to bring me down. But what the journaling does for me is it makes me understand what my goals and what I need to be doing to achieve those goals. It makes me understand them better, and it makes me just understand my goals better and what I'm doing. So that's why I've been doing it.
Amazing. So what final thing then, Max, that I normally ask people is just to give you really an opportunity, if you would like, to talk about whatever's kind of going on with you at the moment. Of course, you've got the book, the 2 Meal Day Diet. I'm assuming that's available on Amazon, on your website, and so on and so
Amazon.
forth. We've touched on the retreats. I'm assuming, again, if people search Max Lowery on Google, the website will come up, or you can give us the website right now.
connectretreats.co.uk.
Amazing. And is there anything else? What's cracking off with Max Lowery? What's exciting right now?
I've got another website launching next year, which will be all about getting people to train in the comfort of their own homes. There's similar things out at the moment, but they're not intelligent. It's like, do this random HIIT workout, do this other random HIIT workout. No progression, no intelligent overload over a long period of time. So this website I'm launching at Christmas, New Year's, it's called Flow 365. And that will be program-based at-home workouts. So there's a bodyweight basics program that you follow for 3 months. There's a kettlebell strength workout. There's all these kind of programs that you follow that will help you achieve your goals. So I'm quite excited about that.
Amazing. Cool. I mean, Max, that about wraps us up for today. Again, sincerely, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me. I reckon there's plenty of opportunity for a round 2 at some point in the future, particularly in the new year when the new website is kind of settled and I'm sure you're not crazy busy with it. There's loads of things which I sort of touched on rather than wanting to detail on, and I really hope the guys listening at home enjoy. But yeah, thanks so much for being with us, and enjoy Brussels.
Thanks for having me.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote for Wellness Academy.